Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we can take the, okay, so now.
I can just take the front part off. That's easy.
Okay, yeah. What?
How do?
Screen share. Desktop. And then view slideshow.
But I don't know where it's recording to.
Yeah, well, it's attached to the file, it should be, right?
Do you know where it's recording to, Mary?
It'll record to YouTube.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't have that on in my thing now.
Well, you have a YouTube account.
I know,
but
it's not
connected to your YouTube. Once this is done, like once we're done broadcasting, it will upload it to your YouTube page where we can go see it.
Okay.
But is that supposed to happen automatically? Because I turned YouTube off because.
Well, you didn't turn it.
I did. There was something, and I thought it was interfering, and so I thought it's not.
Well, let's end this.
I know it happens automatically because Google and YouTube are linked, like online.
Well,
so like your YouTube account and your Google account are the same thing.
Right.
So once it'll finish broadcasting, it'll just upload it to.
Right. So try it. Then.
Okay.
Just go through it and try it, and then.
Okay. So where's the?
No.
Okay.
Just go back and forth.
This.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
All right. So
you should be able to go forward and back. Back. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So now if you start talking, then we can edit that video later.
She knows how to do that.
Okay.
So thank you.
All right. So I'll see you.
Thank you.
All right. Call me if you need.
I will. Okay. Hopefully this is it. Okay, Mia?
All right. Sounds good.
I'm just going to say I'm Carol Baker, and then you can say your name, and then we'll start reading, okay?
Sounds good.
Okay. Hello, I'm Carol Baker.
And I'm Mary McPhillips, and we'll be doing our presentation on placement instability in foster care and the importance of relationships in foster care.
This presentation takes a look at placement instability in foster care using a quantitative study entitled What Explains Instability in Foster Care? Comparison of a Matched Sample of Children with Stable and Unstable Placements by Cole, Roloff, Cross, and Evelyn Manning. The study seeks to clarify previous research findings related to placement instability in foster care. In light of presenting the problem of foster care placement instability, we thought it would be helpful to include information about mentoring as one practice that research has been shown to be helpful to foster care children.
The following is a review and analysis of an article from the Children and Youth Service Review, published in February 2011. The qualitative exploration of relationships with important non-parental adults in the lives of youth in foster care explores the benefits of relationships of foster care youth with mentors and supportive adult figures and the long-term benefits of the relationships. The review will summarize the article's conclusions from the research included, identify and discuss the application of social work practice, and critique the methodology and readability of the article.
Overview of the article, the quantitative article. Coe et al. Looks at placement instability in foster care with the goal of isolating factors that contribute to placement instability in foster care by using statistical methods. The researchers used regression techniques to clean up the variables that would be used to predict placement instability. This was done in order to deal with the possibility of correlated variables and confounded variables. From this, the researchers were able to create two groups of children in the foster care system, one with stable placements and one with multiple moves. The children in the match, one from each group, had the same likelihood or propensity for placement instability. These students were then compared during the study period. Any changes in placement in the multiple move group was then examined. The large number of factors related to placement instability were noted in Coe et al. When they stated Despite the considerable number of studies that have identified both protective and risk factors for placement instability of children in foster care, current knowledge remains limited in several ways. One challenge is that many predictors are correlated with each other. This suggests that the relationship between specified variables and placement stability could be spurious, or my word, confounded. The researchers were also concerned about the following. Many earlier studies explored the number of displacements rather than placement instability itself. Coe et al. Report, only 3 out of 26 studies used multiple moves as an indicator of placement instability, and none of the 3 studies used multivariate analytical methods. Coe et al. Found previous literature is also limited in that a majority of studies examine statistical relationships between case characteristics and placement instability without assessing specific reasons for placement disruption. In light of those concerns, Coe et al. Seek to further what is known about placement instability by applying statistical methods to both placement-related factors and child-related factors. They also examine actual reasons for placement changes experienced in a group of children.
Overview of the qualitative article. These are the main points that I pulled out from Arthan's article. Mentoring relationships that emerge more naturally from youth's existing social networks may be less susceptible to the limitations of programmatic mentoring relationships noted above. This may be especially true for youth in foster care, given their potential to experience greater difficulty forming trusting relationships with others, including unknown adults from mentoring programs. The researchers' hypothesis regarding how beneficial relationships with mentors and other non-parental support figures can be cultivated and supported for youth involved in the foster care system to improve outcomes for this vulnerable population. Overall, the findings suggest that relationships with important non-parental adults present an important source of support for the former youth in foster care, but that many factors can be involved in mediating their initial formation, stability over time, and value in fostering positive youth outcomes.
Critique of the article's title, abstract, and study purpose with the quantitative article. The title of the article, What Explains Instability in Foster Care, Comparison of a Matched Sample of Children with Stable and Unstable Placement, is the title. And the title is a little long, but it's very, it reflects what is in the article very, very well. The abstract summarizes the study well, but there's a reference to a change in attributable reasons for placement instability that is not clear and doesn't appear to be part of the main focus of the research. The abstract reports that the largest factor of placement instability was system and policy issues before the study began, but during the study period, the largest factor of placement instability were foster family related or child behavior related reasons. This represents a change when no treatment had been applied and it needs to be explained. The stated purpose of this study is to supply missing factors related to placement instability in foster care by using statistical regression techniques. The purpose is readily found and clearly stated.
Critique of the article's title, abstract, and study purpose, qualitative. Arthan's article titled Qualitative Exploration of Relationships with Important Non-Parental Adults in the Lives of Youth in the Foster Care is an appropriate length with a clear structure. The title identifies the methodology, qualitative, subject of the research, youth in foster care, and variables being considered, relationships with non-parental adults. The abstract of the article is a comprehensive review of the study, the subject, hypothesis, and recommendation for further study. Arthan's abstract of the article provides the reader with an accurate summary. It is well written and specific themes identified in the article. Arthur's provides a clear study purpose in the introduction. Collectively, these processes are hypothesized to improve youth psychological, behavioral, and educational outcomes. Specific types of support that may mediate such improvements include provisions of guidance and advice, emotional support, role modeling, and tangible assistance.
Suggestions for the quantitative article are the following. Rewording the abstract to clarify the point made about the change found in attributable reasons for placement instability would be very helpful. An explanation of why this point is in the abstract would help the reader to understand its inclusion.
As I was looking for a qualitative article with the focus on children in foster care, the article title and abstract piqued my interest. In my experience working with children in foster care, the multiple placement moves and inconsistent adults in the lives of these children oftentimes leads to attachment issues. Arthurs briefly speaks to this in his research. However, a better understanding of these interpersonal issues can lead to improvements in the system's support in ensuring the children who are being serviced by the foster care system have stability in their relationships. Utilizing Arthur's research indicates that relationships are stronger outside of a formal mentorship program. Instituting an interagency program in which staff are paired with foster care youth as an informal mentor. The children are living in a system that is complicated and hard to understand and has complete control over their lives. Facilitating a relationship with an adult who has an understanding of the system could assist in creating stable, trusting, interpersonal relationships with adults for these youth.
The literature review for the quantitative is as follows. Literature review begins with providing a picture of the state of foster care children, the problem of placement instability, and the negative outcomes of placement instability. Next, the review summarizes previous research conducted in the area of placement instability. The emphasis is on the different approaches used by researchers and a wide range of findings because of this. Seemingly conflicting findings are also discussed. The research problem that emerged from the review were the gaps among the research in placement instability and the lack of the application of statistical methods to clarify findings. The complex and varied findings cited in the review did provide a convincing argument for conducting the study. The stated research questions are, what placement-related characteristics help explain placement instability for children in foster care, controlling for pre-existing differences in their demography and child health welfare history? And what are the specific reasons for placement changes in a group of children in foster care who have experienced placement instability?
Critique of the article's literature review qualitative. Arthur's article identifies limitations to the study. Arthurs noted that the individuals who were interviewed for the study were from a single geographic area and all interacted with the same state system. The findings in the article are unable to be generalized to other foster care youth as the variables outweigh the controls. Although there are multiple variables to consider and each individual's experience is unique, there is a universal need to support children who are in out-of-home placement. Reviewing the impact of mentors in a foster child's life is crucial to the practice. We can better understand how to improve outcomes for children. The identified limitations of the article suggest that improvements to the research and continued research is needed. The article suggests exploratory research should be conducted with the aim of informing the development of programmatic and service innovations and assessing both their feasibility and acceptance by youth and other stakeholders. Subsequent investigations that could be designed to yield reliable information as to the impact of innovations, both proximally and mentoring relationships.
Critique of the article, sample, and sampling, quantitative. The participants of the study were 122 foster children in foster care under the care of the Illinois IDCF from July 1st, 2006 through December 31st, 2007. 61 children with stable placement and 61 children who had experienced multiple moves were matched. The preliminary sample size was a little over 3,400 children, and a subset of 122 children were selected from that sample. There were no ethical issues in studying the participants, since the study was done retrospectively or after the fact using case records, and no treatment was applied. The process for sampling went like this. A little over 3,400 children, foster children records were examined and divided into those with placement that were stable and those who had placement instability. The criteria for placement in the stable group were all children placed in relative or non-relative foster homes with 2 or fewer placements. The criteria for placement in the multiple move group were children who had experienced 3 or more family foster homes during the same period. This sample was then narrowed by using the study dates as criteria and resulted in a little over 3,400 records. Using the random stratified sampling method, 50 children were then selected from the multiple move group. Then 11 children were selected for their high number of placements, resulting in a final sample of 61 children. And it should be noted that the 11 children were chosen purposefully, and then the random sample and a purposive sample were combined into one thing. The propensity score method was then used to match the multiple move group with 61 children from the stable group. The idea was to find children from both groups most like each other and then note and investigate any changes in placement during the study period.
Critique of the article sample and sampling qualitative. The participants in the study were chosen from 4 partner agencies that provide resources, support, and services to the foster care youth population that is aged out of the system. The study looks at 23 individuals who ranged in age from 18 to 25. The participants were previously engaged in the foster care system with multiple placements. The researchers utilized the snowball sampling and purposive sampling techniques. Purposive sampling selects participants with consideration of the research objective. Snowball sampling utilizes the participants already selected to recommend additional participants with similar experiences. The single group research focused on foster care youth engaged in the system in Seattle, Washington. These participants discussed their feelings, barriers, and relationships during interviews with the researchers. These interviews were recorded and later transcribed for analysis.
Suggestions for the quantitative. This sampling process was difficult, partly because of the way the article was written, but mostly because I had trouble understanding the process. Researchers wanted to include specific cases in a study, the 11 children selected purposefully, but this might have compromised the random stratified selection process used to select the other members of the multiple move group. The researchers cited time and money for the rationale of creating a subset of 122 children from the original sample. Maybe if a larger sample was set up initially, the researchers wouldn't have felt like they needed to mix up their sampling with random stratified sampling and purposive sampling.
The article states that the hypotheses Our broader aim in carrying out the research was to use our findings in combination with those of prior research to generate a set of testable hypotheses regarding how beneficial relationship with mentors and other non-parental support figures can be cultivated and supported for youth involved in the foster care system to improve outcomes for this vulnerable population. As a researcher studying the previous stated hypothesis, I would have chosen to utilize a case study method for a better understanding of relationships and how they were developed over time. Interpersonal relationships develop, change, and grow. A single snapshot cannot provide an accurate representation of the relationship's development or the cause of its determination.
Critique of the article data collection methods, quantitative. Researchers called the data for this study from the case records of children in foster care in Illinois at the time of the study. A standard coding scheme was then created by the researchers to use as they to gather the information. One researcher pulled information from the records and another checked the information for quality and accuracy. This information came from a wide variety of records in the Illinois Department of Child Protective Services. For example, they came from reports, action plans, and investigations, among other things. Calling information from records is always a bit tricky, but I think the creation of a standard coding scheme was important for the research team. But again, calling information from records is very subjective in terms of what gets included, what doesn't get included, and how things are interpreted. The techniques used to analyze data were a descriptive analysis was conducted on the data related to placement change characteristics. Then a bivariate analysis was implemented to show which variables were different from the multiple move and stable groups. And the characteristics they used for that were caregiver's relationship to the child, caregiver's commitment to legal permanence, and placement with sibling, and a DSM diagnosis. Descriptive analysis was also used to examine reasons for placement change. And the findings were the number of placements in the stable group was 60. The number of placements for multiple move were 275. The time placed with non-relatives for the stable group was 5.6 months, and the multiple move, it was 11.6 months. Commitment to permanence for the stable group was the caregivers, 88.3% of the caregivers had commitment to permanence, and in the multiple move group, 73.8% of the caregivers had a commitment to permanence. Placement with at least sibling was the same for both groups at 60%. And those receiving a new DSM diagnosis during the study period were stable group 5% and the multiple group 31.2%. Descriptive analysis of reasons for placement change findings were 184 changes in a multiple move group, and these were examined. They found out that foster care family-related changes accounted for 37.5% of the moves. Child-related behavior accounted for 32.6% of the moves, and system policy-related factors came in at 24.5%. The method of data analyses were presented with results shown separately with explanations of exceptions inserted along the way. As far as my suggestions for the quantitative article, the organization of this article really left me dizzy. There was a lot of repeating, a lot of redundancy, but also the grouping of the data analysis and findings in each category would have been very helpful. A different way of organizing it would have really helped me. Presentation of the figures overall first and then followed up with explanations and exceptions would also have helped me.
Critique of data analysis qualitative. The single group research focused on foster care youth engaged in the system in Seattle, Washington. The participants discussed their feelings, barriers, and relationships during interviews with the researchers. These interviews were recorded and later transcribed for analysis and listed in a a chart in the article indicating which reasons for mentorship relationships and ending mentoringship relationships.
Critique of the study limitations and future research quantitative. Limitations of the study were very clearly stated. They were the cross-sectional study design lends itself to bias with regard to children with longer stays in foster care. Multiple move placements are much less frequent than stable placements, which means that the results are, the findings dealt with a minority of the population, foster care children, not the majority. The variable caregiver commitment to permanence involves a judgment call and is therefore subjective. And they also cited missing data as a limitation of the study. One thing that researchers pointed out was the possibility of information that reflected poorly on the agency or worker might be less likely to be included. Many other possibilities of missing information is provided in the article.
Critique of study limitations and future research qualitative. The article identifies several limitations to the research conducted. The study cannot be generalized to a random sample of foster care youth. Limited diversity of the interviewers. The interviews were limited to the youth only providing a single perception.
The suggestion for the quantitative article I have are as follows. The limitations of the study seem to be thoroughly explored. The future research identified by researchers focuses on the reasons for placement change. They propose interviews with foster parents, children, and caseworkers in this area using both qualitative and quantitative methods. I would like to find some way to determine if information and how much in general gets included from caseworker records for the sake of research accuracy.
Suggestions qualitative. The article states that future research that assesses youth-adult dyads at multiple time points that includes interviews with mentors would be helpful. Personally, I agree with this assessment for future research. A longitude study of youth can provide a better understanding of the development of supportive relationships and the causes for their cessation.
Analysis of articles, references, quantitative. References for the quantitative articles were very wide in variety and very up to date. Some of the resources and journals and examples of journals that were used was the Social Work, Children and Youth Services Review, Journal of Emotional and Behavioral Disorders, Child Abuse and Neglect, Social Service Review. These were among many others. The article is current and the 1510 rule was easily met.
Analysis of article references qualitative. The article was published in 2011. At the time of the publication, the article utilized 46 articles, 25 of which were published within the last 10 years. The articles chosen were from a variety of resources. However, the resources were all from the human service and medical realms. The articles focused on study of relationships of children in foster care as well as their attachment development. The articles chosen were both focused on youth in foster care. The articles discussed relationships that the children developed with their resource parents as well as non-parental adults in their life. The theme discussed in the articles is the instability of these relationships. Placement instability can be linked to the lack of mentoring relationships for youth in foster care. A youth who continues to move is unable to create an attachment, and it damages their ability to create attachments in the future. The areas of social work that would most benefit from this research are child welfare workers, school psychologists and clinicians, caseworkers, especially would do well to keep placement instability in mind. Critique of readability. We found the quantitative article difficult to understand due to the redundancy and lack of clarity. The qualitative article was easier to understand and the analysis was clearer due to the visual aids and information provided. Our references for our article are Arthen's Qualitative Exploration of Relationships with Important Non-Parental Adults in the Lives of Youth in Foster Care, and Co et al. What Explains Instability in Foster Care? Comparison of a matched sample of children with stable and unstable placements.
We hope we found this information helpful, and this continues to be a big concern for Mary and I, right, Mary?
Absolutely. And I think that focusing on the instability of children in foster care is definitely something that we need to bring to light. There are, in Philadelphia alone, there's 3,500 children in out-of-home placement in the city. And a lot of them get moved often for a multitude of reasons. But it really affects their stability and their sense of safety when they're moved so often.
Yes, and in Ocean County, New Jersey alone, which is one county, there are currently 7,000 kids in the foster care system. That is a huge number, and for us, some of my friends have said it's related directly to the drug epidemic here, heroin in particular. So it's a very timely issue for us in our area. We hope that you find this information good, and we thank you for listening to our presentation.
Thank you.